So the non-homeless senior units, those will be available through HPD's Housing Connect. And I just want to note that currently there is a 20% preference for individuals that would live within Community Board 8, but that Community Board preference, I think, would decrease in 2027 to 15%. But we would make the commitment to come back to the Community Board and other local stakeholders like PHNDC to come back and make sure that the community is aware when the project is starting to open to marketing, to ensure that we get a lot of eligible applicants from this community submitting through Housing Connect to the building. And we would be able to work with folks both on paper, for those who don't know how to or don't have access to a computer, as well as those who are computer savvy. As I mentioned before, we have had two touch points with the community in furtherance of HPD's community visioning. One was in the spring where we gave a presentation to the full board. The other was this past August where we held an event at the Dean Street Playground to try to get some feedback from folks on how we should program the community facility space. Some of the feedback we got was around health and wellness, arts and music classes for adults and children, as well as after school programming. So all of these things were in line with what we envisioned for that space. It's 1,300 square feet. It's ideal for meeting space or classroom space. And the ideas suggested go well with what we were hoping, which was to continue along with some intergenerational programming.
Okay.
And I will stop there.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and thanks, Olga, very much for your presentation. I'd like to go ahead with the presentation from Apex, and then after that presentation, we'll take questions on both projects. Is that, if that's okay?
That's fine with me. Olga, are you okay?
All right.
Yep.
So I'll introduce Lee Braithwaite now from Apex to talk about their project at 516 Bergen Street. Thanks, Lee.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. I'm Lee Braithwaite, the CEO of Apex Building Group, and my pronouns are he and him. And I am one of the co-developers of this project. Our partner, Bridge Street, is also here. So let me allow the members of our team to introduce themselves. So starting with Apex, how about we go through the Apex team acknowledge themselves, please. Jack?
Yeah, sorry, I was finding my unmute button. Hi, my name is Jack Lee. I'm a development project manager with Apex Building.
I think Kuza, you're next. Kuza.
Hi there. I'm now unmuted. Hi, good evening, folks. My name is Kuza Woodard, and I'm at Apex Building Group, Vice President of Development.
I think we have one more. Phil, are you here? Phil? Okay. You're on mute, Phil.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Philip. I go by he, him. I'm also with Apex Building Group, and I'm the junior architect.
Emmanuel? Is Emmanuel here? Can you hear us? Okay. Let's move on to Greg. Greg Anderson, please.
Good evening, everyone. Gregory Anderson, he, him, President and CEO of Bridge Street Development Corporation. And with me today from Bridge Street, I believe, is Michelle Bostic.
Michelle, you want to acknowledge yourself? Is she there? Okay. Other members of our team, I believe we have.
Hi, I'm sorry. I was not able to unmute myself. Good evening. My name is Michelle Bostic. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the Community Outreach Manager.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. And Benjamin, you there?
Actually, I was able to unmute now.
Oh, hello, Emmanuel. All right.
Thank you for unmuting me. Emmanuel Diamor from Apex. Thank you.
Ben? Ben, you're next. All right, well, we move on. I think Malik.
Good evening. My name is Malik Swinton. My pronouns are he, him. And I work with Mickey Garcia Realty, and we will be doing the marketing and lease up for this project.
Thank you. So thank you all. Our presentation is similar to what you just heard, but so I'll take you through some of the highlights. So if we can go to the next slide, Jack. Did I miss anyone? Everyone on our team is participating in one way, shape, or form. If I missed anyone, we'll get you at the end of the presentation. But as Olga mentioned, our site is also going through the ULURP process associated with AIMUP. And we were also fortunate to be notified today that we were certified. So we're moving along with the process. And one of the things we did on this chart was we highlighted sites A and B on this chart to identify the fact that we are looking to this particular section of the region is we're looking to get an approval for R7D. Next slide, please. So as similar to the Dean Street team, the HPD is the one that's the applicants are actually DCP with a HPD. Apex Building Group and Bridge Street are the sponsors or the development sponsors. And we are focusing, our project is an ELA program, extremely low and low income affordability program, which will consist of 112 units of affordable rental housing units. And it will be a mix of studios, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And as I mentioned, we're looking to go from an R6B to R7D. Next slide, please, Jack. And here is the location of the site, location B, block 1143, lot 25, 17,000 square feet. It currently has HPD parking in the basement, and it's a vacant building. Next slide. So this chart is intended to highlight the fact that we are proud to identify the fact that 8 out of the 11 organizations or companies that are working on this project are MWBE, owned and operated by an MWBE. Apex, Rodney Leon, Ben is a member of Rodney Leon's architect team. He's one of the architects involved, along with Emmanuel from Apex. We've got the Bridge Street team, as well as Mickey Garcia Realty and these other organizations that are associated with our team. Next slide. So our project concept is intended to create communal gathering spaces that take advantage of the open spaces, landscaping, health and wellness activities to create interaction with the Dean Street playground area. And so it will consist of 11 stories. There'll be a ground floor lobby with public and community facility spaces. There'll be a rear yard, landscape, green space for residents, landscape terraces, indoor and outdoor activity spaces, and it will be built to Passive House standards. Next slide. So here's an aerial view of our building, which is the Bergen Street building, which is the bottom of this diagram, of this chart. The Dean Street playground, which is directly across the street from it. And you see Site A, which is the Dean Street building, diagonally across from where our building is on Bergen Street. And this is intended to give you a sense of there is that connectivity between our two buildings, with the Dean Street playground being a central part of the interactions of what we're creating or attempted to create in the neighborhood. The next slide. And so from a community space point of view, we've identified 5,300 square feet of a ground floor multi-purpose space that will be utilized for cultural, arts, and community center types of activities. There will be 2,800 square feet space set aside for our Bridge Street partners so that they can participate and conduct their social services activities. And there will be 2,500 square feet of arts-oriented spaces for arts, community education initiatives, and programming. And one of the things that we really like about our project is our design is the top right diagram indicates how people in the amphitheater space will be able to look outside at the windows that are on the left, and they'll be able to see the activity of people walking up and down the street, but they'll also be able to see the park, which is directly across the street. And similarly, if you look at the photo that's on the bottom left, people on the outside walking along the street will be able to look in and look at the activities ongoing in the amphitheater space. And likewise, in the residential space, in the area where people will, the residential space, the lobby, folks that are in the lobby can look out, and folks on the outside can look in on the lobby. So there's a lot of open space, glass windows, and an inviting kind of environment that we're attempting to create with our design. Next slide. And we're, from a residential point of view, we have 112 units of affordable housing with the AMI ranging from 30 to 80% of the AMI. And the amenities will consist of a little over 2,900 square feet of indoor space, over 8,000 square feet of outdoor space. On the 10th floor, there'll be a wellness center featuring an adjacent landscape terrace and space for yoga, meditation, and aerobic exercise. Along with, there'll be a gym, there's bike storage, laundry rooms on every floor, and there will be an on-site superintendent. Next slide, Jack. So I'll turn it over briefly to Kuza, who will touch on some of the other highlights of the affordability and unit mix of our project. Kuza?
Yes, good evening. Hi, I'm Kuza, he, him. As Lee pointed out, our project is being developed through HPD's extremely low income and affordability program, otherwise known as ELA. We have a mix of 1, 2, 3 bedrooms and also studios. So about 85% of those units will be leased through HPD's Housing Connect. We have a 15% set aside for formerly homeless. As per the ELA program, you know, a lot of these the units are family size. We have about 45% 2, 3 bedrooms. With respect to the affordability, about 2/3 to 64% of the units will be rented to families earning up to 60% of their median income. And what that means is that on average, it's families earning up to $76,260 for a family of 3 per year. As I said, what 15% of the units would be set aside for formerly homeless. There's a 5% set aside for mobility impaired, and then a 2% set aside for hearing visual impaired. I think I will stop there and turn it. And next slide, please.
Thank you, Kuza. What I'd like to do is let Greg Anderson talk about some of the community engagement activities. Greg?
Thank you, Lee. And in the interest of time, I just will say, as Gib mentioned, the community engagement for this process began by HPD in 2020. And as Olga mentioned, it continued with the appointment of our 2 groups for these development projects and continues today. Our meeting here today is part of that community engagement process. We think it is important for us to meet with groups like PHNDC, groups that are in the community and of the community, to make sure that our projects are reflective of the needs and desires of the community to the maximum extent possible. So these meetings will continue to get your input, your feedback. And so we're just happy to be here, and I'm going to stop there, and because I know Gib's got a good agenda he needs to get through. So thank you.
Thank you, Greg. One last comment that I would make before turning it over, Jib, is we have not decided exactly on all of the various cultural or other activities. We want to continue, as Greg said, we want to continue to engage with the community and make sure that we're identifying the right kind of partners to participate with us from an arts and community engagement point of view. So more to follow in that regard, and Greg Anderson and his team will be helping to lead that effort. So with that, thank you. I'll turn it back over to Gib.
Thank you, Lee, and thanks to all your team members for joining us this evening. I want to take a couple of questions that have already been placed in the chat. One of them from Raul, who asks, might there be storage for I think this may apply to either building, so either of you, Olga or Lee, can answer this. Might there be storage for local arts groups? I'm thinking of a neighbor who makes kids' costumes for the West Indian Day Kiddies Parade. Also, steel bands are in dire need of storage space, and it would be wonderful to use this location.
I'll let ladies first, if you want to.
As the descendant of someone that was born in Trinidad and Tobago, I will say that I think we could find some room to have some storage space in the basement. Our basement is almost the full square footage of the building, so there should be an opportunity to at least store some kiddie costumes. Steel pans are rather large, so I'm not sure we could accommodate that. But this is something that we could continue to explore as the project gets further into development.
And similarly, being of parents of Panamanian descent, I'm familiar with the parade. And as long as it's not a float, I think we can hopefully accommodate some of the requests. And that's part of the planning, as Olga said. We'll continue to work with the community to see how we can accommodate and how much of that we can accommodate.
I'd like to then, we have another couple questions in the chat. I'll go back to Olga. Question from Courtney. Olga, can you share some information on the continued maintenance of the community space and the overall building as well? What budget are you all projecting is needed, and how is the team planning to meet those budget needs?
So the community space I believe you're referring to is the adjacent outdoor space to the Dean Street Playground. That space will be maintained by the development team. And, the project will have rental revenue, and we will factor in the maintenance of that space as well as the maintenance of the building overall in our annual maintenance and operating expense budget. Additionally, the project will have one super and a porter. So there will be on-site staff available to help maintain space, keep it free from litter and refuse, etc.
Thank you. Question from Anu with respect to both projects. What water catchment strategies exist? Will the buildings have cisterns or green roofing to ease the rainstorm burden on our community sewers? This is a relevant question considering the work going on Dean Street now.
So
Do you want me to go first?
Emmanuel Demore, I asked that he help answer this question for me for
Sure.
the Street team.
Hi, good evening. Emmanuel Diamor, him. Yes, definitely. We usually have the setback roofs as the green terraces, vegetated terraces. The main roof, it's we're planning to do solar panels, but all the roof that we call in blue roofs, so we have water detention in the roof systems ourselves. And also the backyard, it's all landscape, so it's also able to filtrate water within our site.
Well, first I just want to start off by saying that DEP now requires that all projects submit what they call a stormwater prevention project plan. Everyone's been calling it SWIP in case I didn't get the actual full name right, but basically we will be subject to DEP regulations as to how to divert rainwater, from the sewer and storm system. So we will fully comply with DEP rules, and I think similar to the Bergen Street project, we will have an outdoor rear yard space that will be partially landscaped. That will help divert water from the sewer system. And I believe we'll also be required to have a green roof, which is part of the DOB regs. You either have to have solar panels or a green roof. So we would likely comply with the green trays to, again, divert water from into the sewer system.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to take two more questions, and on these presentations, I'm sorry, we do have a big agenda, as was mentioned earlier this evening. So if your question wasn't answered, you are, I'll post an email address in a second. You're welcome to email us, and we'll try to get your question answered independently later. But there's a question about, I'm just going to sort of summarize this. Vehicles arriving at the Dean Street building needing a curb cut or a way to move out of the travel lane and the parking lane so as to not block traffic. Are there any plans for a curb cut, or what are the loading plans for the Dean Street project?
I'm pretty sure I know who's asking this question. This was presented to us when we had the community meeting in August. And I think I'll just respond with what we said that day, which was, this is something that we will review with HPD as well as DOT. We obviously want to build a building that benefits the community and does not provide a nuisance. I don't know if we would be allowed to put a curb cut there, but the concern is definitely heard. And that is something that we will consider as we progress through the design phase of the project.
And similarly for the Bergen Street team, we heard this question at the community board land use committee a couple of weeks ago. There were no curb cuts planned for our project, but we will attempt to address the issues associated with traffic congestion as best as possible at the frontage of our site.
Our last question here, there's a question about how homeless individuals are able to apply for these projects. Is it through Housing Connect or DHS referrals? And is it possible for ICL to somehow service efficiently both of these buildings, the homeless residents of both of these buildings?
So ICL will be the service provider only for Park Edge for the Dean Street project. The homeless will be referred from DHS, and the very low income seniors will apply through Housing Connect. ICL is an established, highly regarded service provider of both senior and supportive housing. So I have full faith and confidence, otherwise they wouldn't be a co-developer on this project, in their ability to provide services to those populations. But I will turn it over to Ben to elaborate further.
Hey, all, can you hear me?
Got you now, yes.
Sorry, could you just clarify, like, more specifically, like, what I could elaborate on outside of what Olga just shared?
I think the question was how ICL would be able to provide services to both populations.
Sure. So we serve a huge number of people. This site, along with most of the sites that we have, will have a program manager, we'll have multiple case managers. So, we're highly specialized at all of these types of care. So this is something that we do every day. Yeah, we could get more specific than that, but I'll just say for the context of this meeting that this is what we do, and we've been operating over the last, I guess, 44 years at this point, doing this type of work.
So for the Bergen Street team, I'd ask that Malik, if you would give a brief description of the process, and then Greg, if you could share some insight as to how your team will be providing support for the residents in the building. So Malik, can you hear us? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. So the question here starts with the homeless individuals and how they'll be able to apply. My understanding is that the homeless individuals typically come through the referral program. I'm not sure how people apply on that end. I'm more familiar with the application through Housing Connect and after the referrals are received. So through Housing Connect, there is no homeless preference there, so they will only be satisfying the other preferences that are available, the mobility, the community board, and the general preference. So
Let me jump in and just thanks, Malik. Yeah, so but that's for the 15% set aside. Yes, those folks will be referred through DHS as well for the 15% homeless set aside. And like you said, Malik, the 85%, the other 85% would go through the Housing Connect 2.0.
And just from our standpoint at Bridge Street, we have currently 400 units of affordable housing, and we provide a great deal of services, primarily through our senior building at Quincy Senior Residences. And so we will have sufficient staff and capabilities to work with the formerly homeless population in the Bergen building.
All right. Well, I would like to thank both of your teams for joining us this evening and presenting these projects. These are housing projects that represent the type of housing that's desperately needed in New York City, senior housing and deeply affordable housing as well. And so it's great from a personal point of view. I would say it's exciting to see these get developed. So appreciate your taking the time to join us this evening, and we look forward to staying in touch with you as your projects move forward. So thanks very much to Olga and Lee for joining us and your respective teams, and look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you.
Same here.
Have a great
Thank you
evening.
so much.
Thank you. So as we mentioned, the Dean and Bergen projects now are subsumed into the AIM-UP neighborhood rezoning. The AIM-UP neighborhood rezoning had a history that began with Community Board 8 with an initiative that was known as M-Crown. And under the stewardship of Councilmember Hudson, to that vision was added the idea of safety improvements and streetscape improvements for Atlantic Avenue. And that's a major focus of the non-zoning benefits of the AIM-UP rezoning. Councilmember Hudson convened a number of community engagement events in the spring of 2023, and Kaja, Kuhl, and myself both participated in the steering committee that helped guide some of that process, which resulted in some community recommendations for non-zoning benefits for the AIM-UP rezoning. And we wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what, although these benefits will be part of, we hope, an agreement that will be reached between the council member and the administration with respect to this rezoning. In advance of that, we'd kind of like to share some thoughts about what type of street improvements and streetscape design could be brought to this location as a function of this project. So these are ideas that have been developed from the community recommendations that came from Councilmember Hudson's engagement process. They're not, they're not the positions of PHNDC or the council member or anyone else. These are really ideas for discussion, but we thought it would be helpful to share them with you so you have an idea of that dimension of the AIM-UP rezoning as well. So I will turn it over at this point to Kaja to lead that discussion.
Yes, thank you, Gib. So hello, my name is Kaja Kuhl. My pronouns are she, her. As Gib mentioned, I was a member of the steering committee that helped and facilitate Crystal Hudson's public process over a year ago, and I'm also a member of PHNDC and live in this community. And I'm going to share some slides. And so as full screen, as Skip mentioned, I can share links to some of these documents in the chat later. I know it's been a while, and I wasn't prepared that this project would be certified today. So we've been thinking about how to summarize in a way the vision that's manifested in this report. On the left, you see the rezoning area itself into what's referred to as points of agreement, and really, and you're only seeing today a portion that's concerned with streets and infrastructure and open space. The vision report had 3 sections. There was another section on economic development, and there was a section on housing that described the community's priorities. And so we anticipate that similarly, these topics will be summarized and manifested in points of agreement. And the model here is really, to a certain extent, on the left, you see the cover letter of points of agreements that were reached with the Gowanus rezoning, which were 56 points that the city committed to at the point of approval of the rezoning in 2021. And these commitments are now being tracked. And so there are a broad range of commitments, from improvements to open space, commitments in terms of how much affordable housing will be provided, workforce development. But the thing that we wanted to present and share, get some feedback on, are some of the things that we heard very loud and clear about necessary improvements to Atlantic Avenue and adjacent streets, as well as open space. And so there are 10 draft points that we shared with the council member, and we're sharing with you now, and we want to share with others how they get manifested into a document that then both the administration and the council members sign, is to be determined. So it's a process until this actually reaches city council now, the ULURP. But the first one here is what we heard in these public hearings is just a commitment to make short-term light touch street improvements as soon as possible to all of the intersections between Atlantic Avenue and all the cross streets in the project area. That's really from Flatbush Avenue all the way to Kingston Avenue, I believe, is the easternmost that we mention here, which is within the quarter-mile buffer area of the rezoning area. And then the second, and I think this is sort of the most important one to many people that came to the meeting, is that we're asking the city to commit to a comprehensive street design in association, redesign in association with the rezoning that really allows for a more livable street on Atlantic Avenue, provide safe east-west bike travel, safe crossings, and improve bus travel. And we want the city to also commit not just to a study, but also to capital funding to implement this design. A couple of things that are important to note is here the coordination between bike and bus travel in east-west direction. Many of you may know that there's a lot of conflict between buses and double parked cars and bikes on Bergen and Dean. And so in discussing the community ideas, we felt it's important to emphasize that. We also think it's possible to reduce the amount of space dedicated to only vehicles on Atlantic Avenue to no more than 50%, and think that this should be studied at least. What exactly that design then is should be the outcome of traffic studies and design studies. And we'll come to the discussion of open space in a second. The idea is that this area around Atlantic Avenue is an area that lacks open space. And so trying to mitigate that by redesigning Atlantic Avenue between Flatbush and Nostrand as a linear park is one way that this could be mitigated, and could also improve traffic safety along Atlantic Avenue. curb zone management plan, and I think this came this is part of the conversation about these 2 affordable housing projects too. This image on Dean Street is a very common occurrence in our neighborhood, and especially on Dean, which is narrow, where delivery vehicles that cannot park directly in front of residential vehicles tend to block the bike lane, make it difficult for other vehicles and buses to go through. And so we're think it would be prudent to have a curb zone management plan for the entire rezoning area that takes these kinds of conflicts into account and plans for it. And we also think that this is actually one thing that would be really smart to do together, as part of the rezoning, to require developers to then adhere to this management plan so that we can plan for creating, short-term parking and delivery spaces in front of buildings instead of, having all that space directly in front of buildings being blocked by private vehicles that are parked there. Just as an example of what management of the curb zone could mean. And then also in this chapter was, open space was part of the chapter of streetscape. This is a map that is in the vision report that was issued last year, and it shows the shows all the small park spaces that exist in the larger study area. In gray, you see the walk to park gaps, and there are quite a few in that rezoning area as well. And so to kind of address that, the visioning plan came up with a couple of ideas of where open space could either be added or improved. And so here's a list of the things that some are incredibly obvious that should be part of points of agreement so that we can really hold the city accountable for improving those. This is Hancock Playground. It's on the north side of Atlantic Avenue. It's a primarily asphalted area that could be improved to upgrade it and create more features for passive and active recreation. And really have the city commit capital funds to do this in a certain amount of time. Underhill Plaza, I think we all, many of people in the community know this. It's already an active place. Capital funding to improve it and upgrade it can and should be a commitment as part of the rezoning. Extending funding for open streets and funding community partners to help operate the existing and also create new open streets in several corridors near Atlantic Avenue should be in this agreement. One thing that was mentioned in the visioning report is the idea to convert the open spaces along the Franklin Avenue shuttle into a park. And so we would like the city to study this and also commit capital funding for a potential conversion of these underutilized spaces into a park. Fortin Playground is on Underhill, and here one of the ideas was that it can be extended to include the underutilized parking lot behind the building that's currently used by DOE. It could also be extended to use the building itself if DOE would be so inclined to move. And then the last 2 points in the sort of short list and summary of what the visioning report describes is enhanced public transit, and that refers to buses that, and I mentioned this earlier, in order to really move buses along an east-west direction more clearly, a coordinated approach is needed. There's already a plan by the MTA to move the B65 from Bergen and Dean to Atlantic up until Washington Avenue. That plan could be extended beyond the rezoning area to further east. And that would free up Bergen and Dean for, safer bike travel. And then I don't have an image for that, but I think anyone who uses the C train as their main point of accessing subway service would agree that improvements to the stations as well as the services themselves should be a major priority when adding more than 4,000 new units to this area of Atlantic Avenue between Vanderbilt and Bedford. That's my last slide. And I see a lot of comments and questions in the chat that I haven't been able to look at.
Thank you, Kaja. I wanted to say that this is, you can think of the rezoning as having two components. The one component is the actual rezoning, which is the ULURP application that was approved today. The second one involves some of the things Kaja was talking about now, which are what are called points of agreement, independent of the zoning. Those are non-zoning benefits that ultimately are negotiated between the city council member and the administration. Both have, the negotiation of those non-zoning benefits is timed with the ULURP process, because the city council member needs to agree in order to get ULURP over the finish line. Since this project had its ULURP application certified today, the 8th-month ULURP process for this will probably run into May of next year. And the first thing that will happen in the ULURP process is this application will be heard by Community Board 8. I believe Community Board 8 has probably somewhere around till the middle of December to do that. So it's likely this will become a part of the Community Board 8 land use meetings in November and December. And if you're interested in this project, you might want to consider attending those meetings as well. The other thing I wanted to mention just briefly is that the open space is a really important issue. When the Atlantic Yards project was first announced, the environmental review for Atlantic Yards found that the project had about 0.36 acres of open space for 1,000 residents. Now, the city's guideline for how much open space per resident should be provided is 2.5 acres. So you can see it's a very, very different number. And by adding more density here, it is important that creative strategies for open space be considered as well. With that, I see a couple questions. One of them is the question of how many people will 4,000 units bring to the area, assuming all 4,000 units get built. So I think the metric that people use typically is 1.5 residents per apartment. So that's probably 6,000 apartments. But it's really important to remember that the AMUP rezoning has a western end that begins in Prospect Heights, but it only is really one block of Prospect Heights. And that's the block, the south side of Atlantic Avenue between Vanderbilt Avenue and Washington Avenue. The majority of those additional units will be in the Crown Heights part of the project. Yes, Aiden, thank you for correcting me. And Norman, thanks for posting that about open space. Let's I'm looking for these items that are questions. Daniel asks, Underhill Plaza has increased gridlock and noise pollution on Washington Avenue, while Lowry Triangle itself is dilapidated. Couldn't we please spruce up the triangle for community use and remove the plaza so cars don't have to make crazy turns around the triangle to go south on Underhill from Atlantic Avenue? So there is actually, in fact, a project in the hopper, we understand, to consolidate Lowry Triangle and Underhill Plaza. And Kaja alluded to it in her presentation. But that is actually a project that's in the works. So that both of those things will happen. I don't believe there's any movement afoot to remove Underhill Plaza. Actually, the creation of a public plaza along that block of Underhill has been something that's been discussed for as a part of AMUP even before the open street and the plaza came to Underhill Avenue. If there are other questions, I mean, I see some other questions with respect to moving the B65 from Tracy. why not move the paint of the bike lanes? Easier to do with less congestion on Atlantic. You know, these are all valid questions. We're not really trying to answer those or solve those questions right now. Those will have to be part of a much bigger study. We kind of presented this because we wanted to frame what some of the issues are that are on the table now. So as a community, we can begin thinking about what the priorities are and what the solutions might be. Are there other, if anyone else has a question to ask, if you could please raise your hand. We can take a couple questions and then we'll move we'll move the agenda. All right, I don't see other questions at this point. I would say that I believe we'll end up spending some more time on this topic, we will probably have more to come back to you with in terms of other ways to help influence the process over the next 8 months. Kaja, thank you. Thanks very much for presenting that overview. Yeah, I see, Lisa, I do see you're asking about hiring locally. This is going back to the previous presentations. Let me just say that these 2 development projects have now been bid out and awarded through RFP. And so those are those projects themselves have effectively moved past the stage in which other benefits are being negotiated. Those bidders, when those bidders both applied for the RFP and they were selected. In general, community benefit agreements happen before a new development is approved or awarded, not after. But local hiring is a good question, and we will ask both teams how they plan to accommodate local hiring. Okay, I will then move on to, and I will try to make this quick, but I'll move on to our final subject as far as new local development is concerned, and that's Atlantic Yards. Bear with me for one moment. I'm going to share a presentation that the Brooklyn Speaks Coalition gave to a group of elected officials and staff a few weeks ago regarding the status of the Atlantic Yards project. This is a project that is incomplete at this phase. What you see here, obviously, is the Vanderbilt Rail Yard, which is supposed to have a deck built over the top of it and have 6 buildings on top of the deck, as well as about 5 acres of open space. I'm going to just mention the Brooklyn Speaks Coalition was formed in 2006 to increase public engagement and improve accountability at Atlantic Yards. Atlantic Yards being the biggest single source development project in Brooklyn, a $6 billion project. And you see the coalition members here. They are civic organizations like ours, affordable housing organizations like Impact Brooklyn and the Fifth Avenue Committee, and some economic development organizations like the Atlantic Avenue LDC and the North Flatbush Business Improvement District. An important thing to mention is in 2014, we pushed a settlement with the state of New York and with the then developer Forest City Ratner to get a commitment that all affordable housing at Atlantic Yards would be complete by May of 2025. It's a total of 2,250 units. There are still 877 outstanding. Those units are intended to be provided in buildings over the rail yards, which cannot possibly be built by May of 2025. The current status of Atlantic Yards is as follows. The developers of record are a group called Greenland USA. They are the American arm of a Shanghai-based developer, Greenland Group. And in 2016, they borrowed some funds, some $350 million using EB5 loans, which about a year ago, they announced it was announced by the lenders we're going into default and foreclosure. So today, because those loans were secured by development rights over these rail yards, the EB5 investors who are represented by the individual EB5 investors are represented by a group called the U.S. Immigration Fund, and also the Fortress Investment Group, which is a private equity fund, also owns a bunch of that debt. They now control the future of development over the rail yards. And Greenland USA remains the developer of record for what's known as Site 5. This is the block here where the former Modell's and the current PC Richards buildings are. But they lack the capacity to develop. They are in default on their other debt and do not appear to have the ability to continue the project. So we believe it's likely they'll try to market the development rights to Site 5. We recently discovered that in October 2021, Empire State Development gave Greenland a development lease for Site 5, in which ESD agreed to some significant project changes without a formal modification to the project plan or the required environmental review. First, they agreed to remove the building B1 from the project. That building was supposed to be in front of the arena where the subway entrance is today. And instead, they are going to be allowed to transfer the density of that building over Flatbush Avenue to the lot at Site 5. So that will now accommodate a building up to 910 feet tall. I'm going to show a couple images that journalist Norman Oder has published, who's on the meeting tonight, and appreciate these to help clarify what's being proposed. The transfer of density from this building B1, which would have sat in front of the arena across the street, would have yielded perhaps a building of 800 feet or approximately 80 stories. In 2016, the developers proposed to ESD a building of 785 feet tall, but the Site 5 development lease gives them the ability to build a 910-foot building, or a building of approximately 90 stories. So that's not taller than Brooklyn Tower, the 9 decal building, but it would be the second tallest building in Brooklyn. They agreed to allow 1,600 apartments in the project, in addition to the 6,430 already approved. They did not require any additional affordable housing, but did allow a 550-room hotel at that site as well. Finally, ESD agreed to remove the urban room from the project, which makes the Barclays Center pedestrian plaza permanent. The urban room was intended to be a glass-enclosed atrium at the bottom of that B1 building and was a key public benefit for the Atlantic Yards project. It was the only public benefit, except for affordable housing, that actually had a hard deadline and monetary damages associated with non-performance. It had a May 22 completion deadline, and the liquidated damages for non-performance were $10 million. In July of 22, elected officials called on ESD to collect the damages, but ESD had already in October 21 signed away the urban room and agreed to remove it from the project completely. They did not mention that at the time, and it was only discovered through FOIL requests by Norman Oder and myself. So the site, together with the Site 5 changes that have already been agreed, Greenland in 2023 proposed additional changes to the Atlantic Yards project that would result in larger buildings along Atlantic Avenue in the sites over the rail yard that haven't been developed. So here you see the arena and these other buildings that are yet unbuilt, these 6 buildings here. So the buildings that are going to come in that were proposed by Greenland in January of 23 are larger, some of them substantially larger. And the reason these larger buildings were proposed is because Greenland did not believe the existing project approvals created enough economic activity to allow the project to be financed. In other words, they thought that the development over the rail yards had become uneconomical and they needed bigger buildings to make it work. In August, the Wall Street Journal reported that the U.S. Immigration Fund, Fortress Investment, and Related will form a joint venture to develop those sites, and it's possible that Related might have an interest in acquiring the Site 5 lease. But no matter who develops the remaining sites, we believe that it's likely the new developers will also request increased density and to extend the affordable housing deadline. Extending the affordable housing deadline is a problem because when that was negotiated, we got an agreement that should it be missed, the developers would owe $2,000 a month for every affordable apartment not completed. And that money is supposed to go to the New York City Housing Trust Fund to build or preserve affordable housing in the 4 community districts that were to receive preference for Atlantic Yards affordable housing. And that's important because these 4 community districts have experienced significant gentrification and displacement. And the demographic analysis we commissioned in 2014 showed that by 2035, the displacement of the Black populations of these 4 community districts would become extreme. So, over the course of 45 years, the 4 districts would go from a majority Black population of 59% to only 15%. And for that reason, we do not believe that the affordable housing deadline should be negotiated. We don't believe that these developers should be given any latitude on the liquidated damages because the affordable housing that the project was supposed to be provided is so desperately needed. Further, the affordable housing the project has provided up to now has been skewed to upper income affordability bands. So, just as an example, although a large number of the units were promised in 2005 for low-income bands. In fact, the high-income bands have gotten the majority of the units today. So as I said, the key points are the affordable housing commitments should be non-negotiable. If they weren't honored, a precedent would be set for any future commitment also to be disregarded. And neighborhoods around the Atlantic Yards project have experienced significant displacement of Black residents, so the funds from the liquidated damages would be very useful to create and preserve affordable housing in those neighborhoods. We also believe that future affordable housing at Atlantic Yards has to reach low-income tenants. The project's housing as a whole should be 35% affordable, consistent with the 2014 settlement, and additional affordable apartments added should be at an average of 60% AMI, with 10% of the total units added at 40% AMI, and must be permanently affordable. We believe the public needs to get some benefit from the urban room. The urban room was a key public benefit of the project. Now that we've removed it, the public should be compensated for that in some way. And we believe that way should be through a charge to the arena operators that could be used to pay for the cost of a publicly operated quality of life enforcement unit, which, if you've spent any time at the intersection of Flatbush Avenue and Atlantic Avenue, is desperately necessary. And we believe that the public and its elected representatives have to have a good reason to believe a new plan can be completed. We need a third-party analysis of the financial feasibility of these proposed changes, and the elected officials need to be given due time to evaluate those findings. So with that, I'm sorry I haven't been following the questions while I've been talking, but rather than go through and scan the chat, if anyone has a question or two you'd like to ask now and wants to raise your hand, I can recognize you. Okay, so I don't see any hands, and because I don't see any hands, we're going to go ahead and move to the next part of the agenda. I just, in closing, will say that this is an area that you can expect to see a lot of activity over the next year. This is an active negotiation now between the lenders related and Empire State Development, and the outcome of that is going to have a huge impact, obviously, on what ends up getting built for the rest of this project. So with that being said, we'll now move on to the business portion of our meeting. I have been informed earlier by the secretary that we have achieved a quorum for the meeting. So I'll call the meeting to order now for the purposes of business. And again, I will say that this is the October 2025 general meeting of the Prospect Heights Neighborhood Development Council. The Prospect Heights Neighborhood Development Council was founded in 2004 as a nonprofit civic organization. And today we have just over 200 members. And together with the members, we have a mission to build a safer, more just, and sustainable neighborhood. And if you're looking for some more information on PHNDC, I'm going to paste a couple of links for you in the chat now that you can refer to, including information about how to join the organization as well, and to subscribe to our weekly bulletin if you are not already subscribed. Our first order of business now is the minutes of our May 29 general meeting. The minutes were circulated previously to all of our members, and I will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the minutes and accept the minutes as presented. Is there a motion? And again, if you can, Mary, I think you just made a motion. Thank you. Is there a second? Raised hand can do it.
I'll second.
Second by Jason. Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, the minutes from the May 29th meeting are adopted as presented, and we will move on to the treasurer's report. This is the report for our last fiscal year, which ended on June 30, and I will turn it over to our treasurer, Jason Simmerl.
Great. Thanks, Gib. Can you see my screen?
We can.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Simmerl, he, him, and I'm the treasurer for PHNDC. As Gib mentioned, this is our financial statements for our last fiscal year, which started July 1, 2023 and ended June 30th, 2024. So a bit dated, but represents our full fiscal year. So I think all of you received a copy of these financial statements as part of an email that Gib sent out, along with the agenda for tonight. So I'm just going to cover some brief highlights from here, and if anyone has any questions, happy to address those as well. So first of all, looking at the balance sheets for the fiscal year, we totaled around 75,000 in assets. Around 20,000 of that was in cash and equivalents, around 50,000 in receivables. Balancing that out with liabilities and net assets. So we had about 16,000 in liabilities at the end of the fiscal year, and around 58,000 in total net assets. We have some nice breakdowns here if you're interested in seeing where the receivables or liabilities were at that time. And then we also have a breakdown of some of the assets that are donor restricted. We have several programs where we receive funding that is restricted, for example, for the Holiday Lights, the Landmarks, the Brooklyn Speaks program, East Side Parklands, Open Streets, Citizens Committee, and PSBA. We started the fiscal year with around 9,973 in restricted assets, and then ended the year similarly close with 9,381 in donor restricted assets. Then moving on to our income statement, profit and loss. We had a total intake revenue of around 156,000 for the fiscal year. The largest contributor to that was our program service fees, which is related to the Open Streets program. The second highest was from government revenue sources, with the DOT being the largest provider of funds in that category. And then that was closely followed by a campaign that we did to raise contributions from individuals throughout the community. In terms of expenses, we ended the year at around 189,000 in expenses. The largest portion of that went to payroll and expenses associated with managing staff for our Open Streets program. So that's where this 121,000 as well as the 42,000 comes in. Because our total expenses were around 190,000 and our total revenue was around 156,000, we had a deficit of around 32,000, which brought down our total net assets that I mentioned in the beginning to around 58,000. A lot of numbers here, but again, you have all this in your email if you want to review it more closely. Any questions? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Jason. Next, we're going to move to committee reports, beginning with our Livable Streets Committee. And I'm going to turn the presentation over to Joseph Taylor. Joseph, are you with us? I think you are.
Yes, I am with us. Let me arrange some windows and share my screen. All right, hopefully folks can see my presentation. Great. So we recently sent a feedback letter to the DOT regarding the Prospect Heights public realm plan. This was a very, very early stage plan put together by DOT a few months back. They asked for public comment at a town hall, and many people made comments and so on. We got together over a couple of sessions as the Livable Streets Committee and looked in a little bit more detail at this plan and the options, especially for the Grand Army Plaza and how they relate to our the street design guidelines that we're developing. So DOT proposed two alternatives. Both of these reduce the number of crossings over streets for cyclists and pedestrians. Both options simplify the B69 bus route so that it has a little bit of a straighter path. And both of them reduce the number of traffic signals. So as you transit through this in a car, you will hit fewer red lights. They also tend to avoid some of the big, wide open, 6 or 8 lane chunks of road where that you might have to get all the way across from one side to the other in order to make an exit. So we viewed them both as improvements to really all of the experiences of getting through this area in a bus, getting through this area in a car, getting through this area on a bike and on foot. And
Joseph, if I can interrupt you for a second,
yeah.
somebody just posted this. Is it possible? Can you move to like a full screen view of
Yeah,
the?
absolutely.
Since
For
there's a
some
lot
reason,
of
I've
detail.
completely forgotten how to do that really quickly, but yes, there you go. How did? Sorry about that. So with that, we have a couple of comments on option A. This is our less favorite option, so we spent a little bit less time on it. But if you're going from Vanderbilt and or if you're going from Union to Vanderbilt, basically from the southwest of the plaza to the northeast of the plaza or to the north of the plaza, you've got to have this kind of hairpin turn here, and it seemed like a little bit not as well fitting with the general theme of kind of improving flow around this spot. There's also more traffic signals in this option than in option B, without providing very much benefit for people walking. And there are more road crossings for similar pedestrian paths. So if you're walking from Vanderbilt into the park, or from Union Street to Eastern Parkway, or any of these other, there's generally going to be one or two more crosswalks that you've got to wait for if you're walking, versus option B, which I think provides significantly better connection to people walking, and also appears in a number of ways to be an improvement for people in cars as well. Again, the B69 route is simplified. There's much more pedestrian space. The fountain, the arch, and the park are all connected by continuous pedestrian space. There is a raised intersection here at the Eastern Parkway Service Road with a stop sign, so it's much clearer who has priority in this location. There is a St. John's Place between, I think this is 8th and Flatbush or Plaza Street, becomes a plaza, and that should knock out this skew intersection. So folks that would normally be driving in through here and come into here in order to enter the plaza will take this left and then go through. So there's only one intersection here instead of two, which is going to make this pedestrian crossing easier. It's going to reduce some speeds. When this is a green light, people won't be flying through here across the crosswalk. So it's definitely viewed as an improvement. And also the one of the biggest complaints for pedestrians here is when you're going from the park to the library and probably beyond. One of the main entrances to the park from the east here is crossing from the area in front of the library to an island here and onwards. And currently you have 50 people waiting on about 10 square feet of concrete waiting to get across, and this makes that whole crossing in one signal phase. So it's and it's also a little bit narrower here, so it should be an improved pedestrian experience as well. We do have a couple of comments on option B. One of them is we noticed a couple of things. There's a slip lane here, and slip lanes generally, while they help car throughput, they this pedestrian crossing then becomes more dangerous. It's significantly harder to cross there because either you've got people who are like, hooray, I get to bypass the line of cars here and take a right, and not looking for pedestrians. And then there's this other movement, which is if you're trying to come down Vanderbilt and get onto Eastern Parkway, there's no left turn lane here at the moment. you have to actually get onto Plaza Street over here and then take this left and then go on there. And so we're suggesting the addition of a left turn lane here and also a right turn lane here, so that we can, and those can use the same signal phase because they both conflict with this crosswalk, but they don't conflict with each other. And then we can eliminate this, this slip lane and make that just a bit safer for pedestrians. There's also what is kind of a funky choice for routing bicycle traffic from Plaza Street into the entrance to the park and all points east of that, which they decided to put this two-way bike lane across 3 lanes of traffic. And based on the phasing, you know, you can't quite work out the signal phasing here, but based on the phasing, it seemed like when cyclists were allowed to go through this, there would be a line of parked cars sitting here, you know, waiting for the light. And so we said, well, why not run across the north side of this street and make the crossing here when that signal phase is ready. That's actually the way that option A does it, and I think it's a significantly better option. So we've suggested that, and also there's a couple of, you know, we have this nice big green stripe across the plaza, but we saw 2 issues with that. One is that traffic coming off of Prospect Park West doesn't have a clear indication of where it should go, so you might have people kind of fanning out to get to where they're meant to be, which will put them more into conflict with people walking in the plaza, and also the same on the other side onto Flatbush. And so we suggested 2 things: that they stripe those routes coming off of the bike lanes on Prospect Park West, to how to enter the plaza in a efficient and safe way, and then also to make sure that whatever route through we use here, that it doesn't conflict with the green markets that happen every weekend. You know, if you currently, if you're on a bike and you want to go past Grand Army Plaza, you just stay on the north side, and you don't have any conflict with the green market. Now that this is all one space, we just want to make sure that they've thought about where to put the green market, where to put east-west traffic, so that so that you don't have to dismount or anything and ride through a congested pedestrian environment. You know, that's probably not as big of a deal if you're trying to get into the park. You know, you're doing laps in the morning, like you can take a walk for 20 feet to get through the green market. But if you have nothing to do with the park, you're trying to get east and west, you shouldn't have to. So yeah, that's the end. Let me stop sharing and visit the chat for questions.
We have a question from Joshua about how does one get from Union to Vanderbilt or vice versa? I guess that's probably in the larger picture.
Yeah, I can pull that up again.
I guess, Joshua, it's not, I'm sorry, it's not clear if you are looking for, if you're talking about pedestrians, cyclists, or cars in that question, but maybe we can answer all 3.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer all 3.
Oh, Josh was talking about cars in option B.
Okay, so if you're heading from Union Street to Vanderbilt, so
can you do the slideshow again, Joseph?
Yes, I can. So if you're coming from Union Street, it's on the left here. Vanderbilt is at the top of the page here. So in option A, I think you've got to do this somewhat funny hairpin right here, which we've asked to avoid. That's what, or we didn't have an idea of how to avoid it, but we didn't like it. Which you have to basically go over to almost Eastern Parkway and then turn around and go back to Vanderbilt. And the other way is a pretty straightforward. You just continue down Vanderbilt and then take a right onto Union. In option B, you're coming from Union. you're going to take a left onto the extension of Prospect Park West, head up here, and go straight at this point onto Vanderbilt. And the opposite is also quite straightforward. You're heading down Vanderbilt, and you take a left onto Union. If you're on a bike, you're going to do pretty much the same thing, except you're probably going to either take get on the bikeway on Plaza and go around this way, or you can continue through the Plaza, through the between the Arch and the Park, and go around that way to Vanderbilt. Yeah, does that answer the question?
Thanks, Joseph. I think we have another question for, I think that answered Josh's question, and I think it might have answered the question Mary posted as well, Union Street to Prospect Heights. It sounds like that's the way you'd go down Vanderbilt Avenue. Mary, did that answer your question as well?
Yeah, I guess you can't go from Eastern Parkway to Prospect Heights anymore. You know, but you can't go across the top.
Yes, so that one, I believe the plan is you get onto that service road at Washington, and then you can turn right onto Plaza Street.
Okay, so but
Yeah.
you can't, because at this point you can't turn left onto Washington Avenue from Eastern Parkway.
Oh, if you're heading eastbound on
If you're
Eastern
going,
Parkway.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think you can let me just think on that.
You don't have to answer it now, but that, you know, that there's that awful left turn as you come across the top of the plaza, and then you
Yeah.
pull off to the left and you turn left on the plaza and then go on to St. John's or whatever.
Yeah,
You
and I
really
think
have to go
that's-
on to St. John's.
Yeah, I believe that is still possible if you are coming from the circle and you're exiting the circle to head east on Eastern Parkway. Instead of going east on Eastern Parkway, there is a left turn onto the raised intersection of Plaza Street.
Okay.
And
So,
that's a
but
raised
what you would have to
intersection.
do then is go down around the circle.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You go through the circle as if you're heading towards Eastern Parkway, eastbound, and then you
have to you make a left on the circle. When you
Yeah.
come off of Union, you make a left onto Grand Army Plaza and go down around the bottom of the circle.
Yes. Let me or basically.
It doesn't
yes,
matter. I guess it was a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You end up I think the best way to get into like that this furthest south part of Prospect Heights is you end up turning onto Plaza Street East at the southeast end of the whole Grand Army Plaza, and going over that raised intersection.
The same way you do it
and then
now.
going in now.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's the same.
It's just
It'll
a
be a
raised
little bit of a
intersection.
different experience, but it'll
Yeah.
be the same basic idea. There's fewer lanes to choose from. So you'll have, there's two going straight to Eastern Parkway and one to on the left. So it'll be a little bit less.
But you'll have
It
to cut
looks-
across you'll cut
Yeah.
across the lane that's you have to wait and cut across the lane that comes off of Eastern Parkway.
Yes, and so I don't know, because this didn't cover signal phasing. Some of it we were able to deduce, but in terms of will there be a dedicated signal for that, or whether that will be like, because of the raised intersection there, I would want to see a dedicated phase for that, because I don't want somebody waiting for oncoming traffic to pass and then
Right.
speeding across that, and then suddenly realizing, oh, there are pedestrians all over this and I need to stop some.
Well,
So, yeah.
they might have to think about the Washington Avenue left turn that
The
you
left turn there.
make.
Yeah.
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 Which is more sensible anyhow.
Yeah. Plaza Street East to the bike lane going south on Flatbush. That's kind of covered by the what we're talking about. We wanted a few more green lanes in the plaza to show the different ways. But it's basically you get into the plaza the way that you would if you were going west, and then you turn left in the plaza to go south on Flatbush. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Joseph. For folks who have additional questions, if you come up with something later that you want to ask about, you may email them to streets@phdc.org, and we will try to get back to you. I'm going to move on now, though, because it's getting a bit late, and we still have quite a few things to cover. So we covered Atlantic Yards and the Atlantic Avenue mixed use plan in the earlier presentations. With respect to open streets, Saskia Hagens, who's the committee chair, is remote at this point and has asked that a statement from them and Catherine Pingaro, the co-chair, be read for the Open Streets Committee. So I will go ahead and do that. Give me 1 minute, please. The committee chairs say, we're sorry we're not able to be there tonight, but happy to offer a quick report on the success of our 5th Open Streets season. We opened the street for 22 weekends, packed with more than 30 performances and events that brought our community together in ways that were as diverse as they were delightful. We employed a team of 6, most of whom were with us last year as well, which definitely added to the smoothness of this year's operations. Our calendar for the season included monthly salsa dance lessons and parties, summer sprinkler Saturdays with the FDNY, a 2-day Brooklyn Pride celebration at Branded, kids cooking classes, and a block party with beer wax. We're thrilled to partner with the artists from Underhill Walls to paint new barrier murals at Atlantic Avenue and to bring back our monthly skate clinics on Vanderbilt Avenue and at Underhill Plaza. Also on Underhill, we hosted weekly yoga sessions, mellow music nights, and bi-monthly chess events. And through it all, our restaurant partners reported increased sales during what was a very slow summer. Our monthly blood drive with the New York Blood Center yielded nearly 100 donations, which is the equivalent of helping save nearly 400 lives. We're eager to explore ways to continue to support this life-saving work year-round. As we look to the future of Open Streets, we are committed to continuing to diversify and grow our program in pursuit of greater equity and safety for our community. Pardon me. We want to hear from you what worked, what didn't, and where you'd like to see us go from here. Open Streets is about so much more than just closing some streets to cars. It's about reclaiming public space for people and about building a more just, vibrant, and connected community. And if you have to that point, if you have other comments or questions or suggestions about Open Streets, you are encouraged to email openstreets@phdc.org. I'm going to make just a final announcement about Open Streets. Although the Open Streets season for 2024 has come to a close, there is one more event that's coming, and that's Halloween. There will once again be a Trick or Streets event on Underhill Avenue between Prospect Place and Sterling Place on Halloween night from 4:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. And if you have been there in years past, you know that's a lot of fun. In addition to those blocks of Underhill being closed, the block of Park Place from Park Place to Underhill Avenue will also be closed to make it a safer experience for folks spending time on Underhill Avenue that night. This is, of course, like our Open Streets program, an event that is only possible because we have lots of people who volunteer their time to help set up and make these things possible. So if you are interested in joining them, it is a great opportunity for you to get involved in something fun. And I'm going to post a link here for you to be able to sign up for volunteer shift for Trick or Streets on Halloween night. And we hope to see you there. Are there any questions now? We can take 1 or 2 brief questions. Okay, and I will now move on to the next topic on our agenda. Our next report is landmarks. And Mary, can you make a brief report from the Landmarks Committee?
I'm muted. I'm Mary Shuford, co-chair with Gibb of the Landmarks Committee. My pronouns are she, her. The Landmarks Committee has reviewed 2 applications for certificate of appropriateness since the May general meeting. One was at 123 St. Mark's Avenue. An application was to replace a 1-story partial width extension with a 1-story full width 18-foot deep extension. The new extension will be minimally visible from Bergen Street. The existing punch windows and door openings at the parlor and basement level were to be replaced with altered configurations of the existing openings, which would affect the appearance of the rear facade. While the Landmarks Committee had some discussion about that, we felt that we really did not have any objection to the extension because it was otherwise minimal and not particularly out of keeping. However, the landmark commissioners did take exception to the changes in the windows, and they approved the application with the provision that the window and door openings on the parlor floor maintain their original configuration and that there would be no infill. So that was because it was partially visible, potentially partially visible from Bergen Street. We just received another application a couple of weeks ago for 304 Prospect Place, and that application is to replace a full width 8-foot deep open deck with a raised full width 10-foot deep enclosed 1-story unheated porch at the parlor level. The punched openings and the window guards in the existing building facade will remain intact with minor alterations. There will be no changes to the basement level. And it's a little hard to, what they're doing is essentially building the extension as a raised deck. They're not building it down to the ground level. It's a porch for the owner's use. And that addition is very modest in size and bulk and is comparable with other extensions within that donut. And we have no objection to the application. The hearing for this application is scheduled for October 26th. Anybody have any questions?
So I do see a question from Raul asking if the Landmarks Committee has comments on the development proposals that were discussed earlier. And as Raul points out, they're not in the historic district, but they're close. So in general, the feedback on those proposals would come from the Housing Committee, not from the Landmarks Committee, because they're not in the historic district. The Landmarks Committee principally communicates with the Landmarks Preservation Commission. And the new those other 2 proposals wouldn't end up going before the Landmarks Commission. However, I will put in a plug for anyone who's interested in finding out more about those proposals, talking about them, and potentially helping to develop some recommendations for those proposals. If you're a PHNDC member, you're welcome to join the Housing Committee, and you can do so by emailing housing@phdc.org. And we're happy to have additional members participating in that group.
Gibb, that as part of ULURP, they will go before city planning.
Yes, so as part of
Will
ULURP,
be-
they'll go to the community board A, then to the borough president, then to the city planning commission, and then to the city council. Okay, Mary, thank you very much. If there are no other questions, we'll move on to the technology committee, and I will recognize Aiden.
Hello, thanks, Gib. My name's Aiden Feldman. Pronouns are he and him. I'm the chair of the technology committee. I'm going to keep it very short since this is very behind the scenes stuff and it's late. So our job is to help the PHNDC work better through technology for our members and for the public. Speaking about our first project, I'll hand off to Phil, who's our co-chair.
Thanks, Aiden. My name is Phil Gowden, pronouns he, him, and I'm the co-chair of the tech committee. One of the big things we've been working on since the previous general meeting has been thinking through our membership system. So figuring out how we can operationalize that better, how can we reduce the burden, particularly on the secretary that goes through a lot of the processes before every general meeting to figure out who's in good standing, to identify new members that are about to renew. So figuring out how can we make that all smoother. Also, ideally, this process is going to be a lot easier for members as well. It'll give you different, more ways to pay rather than kind of relying on PayPal as the main interface. It'll also give you kind of a proof that you have paid and are that your payment kind of went through. So that entire process ideally should also be smoother for you, especially around renewals. We'll push to you when it's time for you to renew, rather than kind of you having to always keep in the back of your head of am I up to date? When is that payment due? And doesn't require the secretary explicitly emailing for that. So that's something we hope to be rolling out in the next couple months. Back to you, Aiden.
Thanks, Phil. Another project which we're just kind of getting off the ground is replacing the PHNDC.org website. The old one has served us well, but has been around and, aside from content, not really kept up to date. So looking to get a better looking, more accessible, more mobile friendly design on a modern platform. So next steps are choosing platform, doing user experience design, seeing where we can update and streamline content. Our committee always welcomes new members. No experience is required. As an example, we just worked on a code of conduct. So no technology experience required to do something like that. We would love more members. So please join. If you have any questions, comments, or are interested, email technology at phdc.org. Back to you, Gib.
Thank you, Aiden. Yes, in case you missed it, with respect to the membership system, our goal is not only to make things easier for our secretary, who's Emily Liu, who does a tremendous amount of work for the organization, but also to make things easier for you, our members, and make it easier for you to keep up with dues and be notified on a timely basis as to when your membership is up for renewal, and make it easier for you to pay. So we're hoping to roll all of those things out. And speaking as the person who wrote the last membership system, I'm very excited to see Phil's new membership system. Our next committee report is economic development. I know that I think a new Hedda, who's the committee chair, signed off, but Emily Liu, who is the co-chair of the Economic Development Committee, I think is still here with us. And Emily, I'll ask you if you wouldn't mind making a quick report for the Economic Development Committee. Yes, gotcha. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Emily Liu. As Skip said, I'm secretary, but I'm also the co-chair of the Economic Development Committee. And this year we are working on a holiday guide. So we will, in the next, hopefully, month or so, be reaching out to businesses throughout the neighborhood in order to be put in sort of hopefully a simple guide as our sort of first kickoff sort of project. And also for us to introduce ourselves to all the local businesses.
Thank you, Emily. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to public comments. We've presented a lot here this evening for you all to digest, and hopefully you've heard some information of interest. But if there's anything else you would like to add that you haven't had a chance to ask yet, this is a good time to do it. And Raul, I see you have your hand up, so I will recognize you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the very full meeting here. A lot to talk about. I have something actually about the Duffield Street. I know it's outside of Prospect Heights, but it was always a very connected effort. We're going to be having a walking tour coming up. I just put a link in the chat. The history of the Brooklyn abolitionist history is intense, and even people who are experts on it are kind of amazed at what we've uncovered. The other reason this is highly critical is that the city now owns 227 Duffield, which is the stop on the Underground Railroad that we saved, and they're going to be deciding what to do with it. So we're going to be needing people to attend some community engagement sessions, and I will send information about that. Right now, the dates, as you might not surprise people who have followed a lot of this stuff before, the dates keep shifting, the locations are not known, but we're looking at possibly November 13th and 14th. So please stay in touch with me about that. And I would hope, there's a lot more information there. I'd be glad to share it with anybody at their leisure.
Thank you, Raul. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we will. Okay, yeah, so question from Tom Bose. Did PHNDC provide comments to DOT on the Vanderbilt Avenue streetscape options presented by DOT along with the gap options? The answer to that question is partially. We did make some comments about the north end of Vanderbilt Avenue and the intersection with Atlantic Avenue with respect to improving the safety situation for cyclists there. We did not get into detail about the rest of the Vanderbilt Avenue proposal because we felt that what DOT had presented for Vanderbilt Avenue did not have enough detail for us to be able to sort of substantively react to. Unlike Grand Army Plaza, where they presented a detailed street plan, they didn't present anything like that with Vanderbilt. So we didn't feel we had enough information yet, and we're hopeful that when the next round of community engagement for the Prospect Heights Public Realm Plan comes out, there'll be enough information for us to dig into.
Yeah, and I can add to that we are currently working on some feedback to DOT for what they did present. And so if you are a member and you want to join the Livable Streets Committee, then you can participate in that. Since I've already sent out correspondence to that, if you aren't yet on the Livable Streets Committee, then once you join it, then email me and I'll tell you about it.
Thanks, Joseph. So we'll now go to old business. I want to say that we have a nominating committee formed for building a slate of officers for the annual meeting elections in February of 2025. And Wagaya and Linda were both on the call. I see Wagaya here. I don't know if I see Linda on the call, but Wagaya, would you like to make any comment on the behalf of the nominating committee?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Wagaya Johannes. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm on the nominating committee along with Megan Robinson and Linda Abramson. There will be nominations for the board at the February meeting. And in order to be eligible, you have to be in good standing in the organization, which means attending these general meetings, paying dues. And I think you, Gabe, correct me if I'm wrong, have to have attended within the 6 months of joining the organization. An email was sent out yesterday to all eligible folks. So if you got an email, you're lucky. The positions that will be open are at-large director, secretary, and chair. And so if you have any questions, reach out to us at believe it's nominations@phnDC.org. Thank you.
Thanks, Wagaya. And yeah, just to spell it out, the criteria for good standing are membership in PHNDC for at least 6 months, having attended one of the last 2 general meetings, and being current on dues. So if you weren't a member in good standing because of attendance before this meeting, and you are listening to me talk now, you may now be a member in good standing. So if you have any question about your standing, you may also ask that by emailing membership@phnDC.org if you're not sure if you're a member in good standing. Encourage anybody who's interested to contact the nominating committee, because it's a very interesting experience helping to run a civic organization like this. And we are always interested in new perspectives. That leaves us with one other old business item, and that is the Public Safety Committee, which the membership voted to establish at the last general meeting. We have a member who is willing to serve as chair for that committee. We do not have a co-chair yet. Once we find a co-chair, we will be able to form that committee. So if you are interested in working to improve safety, public safety in Prospect Heights, I encourage you to contact us. You can actually contact me directly if you like, and let me know if you are interested in participating in that way. This committee, the genesis of this idea had to do with some increased incidents of shootings that were happening in the southeast part of the neighborhood, but public safety is an important consideration all over the neighborhood. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to me at the email address I just put into the chat. And finally, our last agenda item for tonight is any new business that members want to raise. There are no pending new business items on the agenda, but if any member would like to be recognized for something in that vein, why don't you go ahead and raise your hand? All right, well, I don't see anybody putting their hands up for new business, which may not be a surprise at 9:10 in the evening. This is a kind of a long meeting as far as general meetings go, but I hope you found it informative. There was a lot of information presented tonight, and I think it's probably clear to everyone that there will be a lot of changes coming to this neighborhood over the course of the next couple of years. PHNDC is fundamentally a planning organization to help influence the community's or increase the community's influence in how the neighborhood is developed. And if you are interested in being a part of that and are not currently a member, we definitely encourage you to join. And I will once again post a link that you can use to join PHNDC. Bear with me a moment. That wasn't it. Sorry, I gave you the wrong link. That must be because it's 9:11 at night now. One moment. Thank you for your patience. I want to thank all of our members of the board who are here this evening, our Vice Chair, Saskia Hagens, our Secretary, Emily Liu, our Treasurer, Jason Simmerl, our at-large directors, Mary Shuford, Steve Flack, and Wagaya Johannes. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion? You know, I'm always surprised how long it takes to get a motion to adjourn. Motion by Emily. Is there a second? Second by Wagaya. Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, our meeting for this evening is adjourned. Thank you all very much and enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.